History was made on today's date. Stay tuned for an American Minute with Bill Federer.
The groans of a dying man kept him awake in the little inn outside New York. He was hardened to the cries because a college friend had persuaded him to be an atheist. The next morning, he learned the man who died in the night was none other than his college friend. His faith renewed, he became America's first foreign missionary. His name was Adoniram Judson, born this day, August 9th, 1788. Adoniram and his wife sailed for India, but were forced by the British East India Tea Company to flee to Burma. There, they translated scriptures, started schools, and their work grew to over 500,000 people.
This has been an American Minute with Bill Federer. For a free transcript, call American Minute at 1-888-USA-WORD.
VCY America presents Crosstalk, a nationwide call-in program discussing issues that have an effect on our families, our communities, our churches, our nation, and our world. Crosstalk, an opportunity for you to voice your concerns for biblical principles. And now live by satellite and around the world on the internet at vcyamerica.org. Here is today's Crosstalk.
We do thank you for joining us on Crosstalk today for our very news-packed program, our news roundup and comment program. And also just a special word to our South Dakota listeners. In our second segment, we're scheduled to have a medical doctor on the program from South Dakota talking about misinformation going on in the state right now pertaining to Amendment G, which will be on your ballot this coming November 5. So special word to South Dakotan listeners here for that second segment of Crosstalk, if all goes as planned today. Live radio, of course, occurring. Our thanks to Sandy for putting together our stories today. So much information that we will be sharing with you today on the broadcast. And friends, as I looked at some of the news today, I thought, boy, how fast the leftist media is changing their tune. There was a panel on CNN today that were laughing and joking about the Democratic ability to hit former President Donald Trump now on his age, and that they have replaced Joe Biden now at the top of the ticket, talking about how he's 78 years old. Kamala Harris, by the way, 59. And so you have CNN political commentator Bakari Sellers and also Kate Boudouin quipping that regardless, commenting about Trump's diminished, that he is diminished, that his fitness is not there. Listening to what they had to say and how their tune has changed from just a matter of days ago.
Let's flip it. What is the lesson you think that you hope Kamala Harris and team take from this?
He's diminished. And I think that if you look at a picture or a message from Donald Trump in 2016 versus the message that you saw yesterday, you see somebody who's 78 years old. And we all have grandparents who age in front of us or parents who age in front of our eyes. And some of the things just don't click like they used to. This is not the Donald Trump of 8 years ago. Not only that, but his material is getting old and stale. I mean, keep going back to Dr. King's like, why am I in this? Like, I'm just up here chilling with Jesus, and you up here like, let me relax.
That's not a laugh. I'm not. There's no politics in my laughter. That was funny.
I was just like, but why am I in this? And I think a lot of people are like, why are you going down this path again? And Jason Miller, Chris LaCivita, and Susie Wiles have done the best they can do with what they got.
They can set up a great operation.
He needs to do. If I was the strategist for Donald Trump, you go out there for 10, 15 minutes, 20 minutes at max, you hit a few things and you get out of there. These like little deviations he takes in the crowd size and everything else, that shtick is so old. But I do think that voters are realizing that as the oldest person in the history of this country to run for president of the United States, you're looking at a very diminished man.
And no matter what the actual is, the political strategy in saying that now works in Democrats' favor.
I like using that talking point, actually.
It is one that you were happy to use.
It's refreshing.
Where otherwise you would shut them all. It's good to see you guys. Thank you.
Isn't that amazing? Isn't that amazing how the table has switched, how the narrative has now completely switched in the talking points coming from CNN? Well, there has been a lot said in the news about President Trump not accepting election results. Let me introduce you to Congressman Jamie Raskin. He has jumped aboard his party's wild claims about Donald Trump as being an insurrectionist, and now he plans to be appearing to, plan his own insurrection. That's a story here that's on WND.com. That would be his plans to have Congress deny Trump the presidency should he win in November. Let's listen in.
What can be put into the Constitution can slip away from you very quickly. And the greatest example going on right now before our very eyes is Section 3 of the 14th Amendment, which they're just disappearing with a magic wand, as if it doesn't exist, even though it could not be clearer what it's stating. And so, they want to kick it to Congress. So it's going to be up to us on January 6, 2025, to tell the rampaging Trump mobs that he's disqualified. And then we need bodyguards for everybody in Civil War conditions, all because the 9 justices, not all of them, but these justices who have not many cases to look at every year, not that much work to do, a huge staff, great protection, simply do not want to do their job and interpret what the great 14th Amendment means. And I'm glad that Sherilyn's creating her new center so we can bring that.
Friends, I want you to understand this is the mindset that is out there, and in my opinion, a very warped mindset in his critique of the U.S. Supreme Court. Very little to do. They only take a handful of cases. Friends, do you know how many cases actually come before the U.S. Supreme Court? It is voluminous. And they go through these cases and then decide upon which ones to take. And the opinions that are written are no short statements, but of course taking exception with the Supreme Court and planning an insurrection and really civil war. And each one of us needing our own bodyguards, he is saying. Well, looking at the Daily Caller, Vice President Kamala Harris spent years in the Senate opposing immigration enforcement measures before she ascended to the White House. And the Harris campaign has quickly attempted now to moderate her image on border security, with allies emphatically distancing the vice president from her border czar appointment. Her campaign chief has suggested that she should keep in place a Biden-era executive order cracking down on illegal border crossings, and she launched a campaign ad that cast her as more of a champion of Border Patrol than President Donald Trump. But as a U.S. Senator from California, she actively opposed border enforcement proposals, and immigration enforcement advocates have identified her Senate career as far left. Video resurfacing right now from 2017 of Vice President Kamala Harris calling on everyone to be woke, resurfaced on social media, and sparking critics and conservatives to lambaste the nominee. What did she say? Here it is.
We have to stay woke. Like, everybody needs to be woke. And you can talk about if you're the wokest or woker, but just stay more woke than less woke. Yeah.
Okay, got to stay woke, got to be woke. By the way, former President Trump wants at least 3 debates with Harris. We have to set the record straight. So far, we understand Harris has only consented to 1 debate on September the 10th. I believe that's ABC. Fox News is reporting the Harris campaign has altered its biography of Minnesota Governor Tim Walz on its campaign website, making a change in its reference to his military service amid ongoing scrutiny. Walz's biography initially said he was a retired command sergeant major. It's been since been updated to say he served as a command sergeant major. Vice President Harris announced Walz as her running mate Tuesday, setting off a series of attacks over his background as Minnesota governor, a lawmaker, and a member of the National Guard. We're hearing more and more the term of stolen valor. Stolen valor. When Walz left the Guard, he had achieved the rank of Command Sergeant Major, but he was reduced in rank months after retiring, leaving him as a Master Sergeant. National Guard officials have said that he retired before fulfilling the requirements for this position. Breitbart is reporting Marine veteran and Republican vice presidential nominee Senator J.D. Vance hit Minnesota Governor Walz for lying about his military service, claimed he carried guns in war. That's another issue. He pointed out that Walz, a retired National Guard, it was said Sergeant Major, not only dropped out of the Army before his unit deployed to Iraq, but has lied about his military service, claiming that he carried weapons in war when he never served in combat in war. LifeNews.com reporting as Vice President Kamala Harris fully prioritized abortion, not just as an option, but as a moral good to be celebrated. She is the first sitting vice president to visit a Planned Parenthood abortion business, a gesture that demonstrates her strong devotion to the abortion industry. But she was not alone when she toured the abortion facility that profits from killing babies. Her newly minted running mate, Tim Walz, was right there with her. Daily Signal reporting that data from the Minnesota Department of Health shows that at least 8 babies who survived abortions in the state were left to die. We understand that Tim Walz repealed a bipartisan measure in May of 2023, stripping the state's requirement that measures be taken to preserve the baby's life and health. Don't even record. Don't even keep track anymore of born alive babies. LifeSiteNews.com, Vice President Kamala Harris's running mate Tim Walz earning the praise of left-wing Congresswoman Ilhan Omar. She praised Governor Walz's record on legalizing pot and making abortion legal through all 9 months of pregnancy. As governor, Walz signed into the law the radical pro-abortion and pro-LGBT legislation. It was the PRO Act legislation that would mean it's legal for any baby to be aborted for any reason at any time up to birth, according to Minnesota Citizens Concern for Life co-executive director Kathy Blazier. The Daily Signal telling us moms across the country say Governor Walz is the most anti-parent running mate Vice President Kamala Harris could have chosen. The real part is that Walz claims to care about kids, but his policies have done nothing but hurt kids. Rochester, Minnesota mother of 3, Janine Buntrock, told the Daily Signal, demonstrated absolutely no respect for parents. He signed a transgender trafficking law in May of 2023 that allows kids to travel to Minnesota and receive medical interventions without parental knowledge or consent. His executive order of March 8, 2023, ensured that Minnesota children can obtain irreversible transgender surgeries and sterilizing hormone treatments. The measures made Minnesota a trans refuge state. FoxNews.com reports that the Democratic Socialist of America took a victory lap on social media after Vice President Harris named Tim Walz as her running mate. Harris choosing Walz as a running mate has shown the world that DSA and our allies on the left are a force that cannot be ignored. Through collective action, DSA and the U.S. left more broadly have made it clear that change is needed. DSA went on to take credit for pressuring Democrats to allegedly snub other candidates in the running, including one with ties to the IDF. Also, from LifeSiteNews.com, Tim Walz instituted a program to bribe teens with $200 Visa cards to take the COVID-19 jab, also offering a chance to win a $100,000 scholarship. And those rioters that hit and destroyed the entire city blocks in Minnesota cities and other cities around the nation, well, those who turned to vandalism, arson, and more, on WCCO, Governor Walz said that they were rightfully angry.
What can you say to Minnesota? Are we going to be safe? Are we going to be okay? Are businesses going to go down? Your thoughts?
Well, it's my responsibility. I would tell Minnesotans that we are doing everything in our power to do that. And I want to hold those two truths at the same time. The folks you see out there at Brooklyn Center are in trauma, and they're rightfully angry at a system that does not serve them and puts black youth and people of color at risk. That is all absolutely true. We also know from experience in May there will be those that will exploit that.
And Tim Walz also admits socialism is, well, it's kind of neighborly.
But we can get out there, reach out, make the case. And for one thing, don't ever shy away from our progressive values. One person's socialism is another person's neighborliness.
And he's also spoken on equity and inclusion.
A society that does not put equity and inclusion at the center of it is certainly going to eventually come to the places where we're at. This is a moment of inflection. It's a moment of real change. It's a moment that those folks who are out there demanding this are not going to take a commission or a report. They're going to want fundamental change. And that is what I think that's one of the exciting things in the midst of all this. You can feel a sense of optimism coming back.
And also a resurfaced video clip since he was picked by Harris, saying there's no guarantee to free speech on misinformation and hate speech.
I think we need to push back on this. There's no guarantee to free speech on misinformation or hate speech, and especially around our democracy.
Who determines what is misinformation? Who determines what is hate speech? Well, it says here by the governor that this is no guarantee to this. And Time for a lesson to be learned on the U.S. Constitution. We'll be back in just 1 minute. You're listening to Crosstalk on VCY America.
Back to Genesis with Dr. John Morris, scientist and creation researcher with the Institute for Creation Research. Dr. Morris, is the metamorphosis of a caterpillar into a butterfly an example of evolution?
No, it certainly is not, Chris. The caterpillar has all the genes necessary for it to alter its shape into a butterfly and then lay eggs which could turn into a caterpillar. This is not evolution. It's simply growth. In fact, this is one of the greatest arguments against evolution. What could cause a perfectly happy caterpillar to attach itself to a tree and dissolve into a mass of jelly and come out with wings and legs and everything that a butterfly has? Natural selection would not do this. All of the genes would have to be present at the beginning and could not have been gained one by one. Chris, I think you recognize this as an evolutionary just-so story. A much better story is the one we read when we go back to Genesis.
Thanks, Dr. Morris. For more information, you can find us on the web at www.icr.org.
You're listening to Crosstalk on VCY America. Ladies and gentlemen, the election coming up on November 5th, so very critical to the very future of our nation. I cannot overstate the importance of this election. You know, a previous guest we had on this program made us aware that statistics point out that only 50% of voting-age Christians are actually registered to vote, and only half of those who are registered actually vote. As I've stated before, you have been granted the stewardship of your vote. Many in countries only long for this type of freedom that we have here in the United States. So, friends, can we urge you, don't squander your vote. Recognize you're accountable before God for the vote that you make. You have a stewardship of that vote. One issue that is on ballots in a number of states this fall deals with the topic of abortion, happening in a number of states. We've interviewed Matt Staver from Liberty Counsel about what's going on in the state of Florida. But South Dakota is another one of those states. And with us today from South Dakota, we have Dr. Patty Giebink. She is a medical doctor, a board-certified OBGYN. She is a former abortion doctor and the author of the book Unexpected Choice. She's a South Dakota native currently residing in Chamberlain and has delivered hundreds of babies both domestically and in hospitals overseas. She's a fellow at the American College of Obstetricians and Gynecologists and a member of the South Dakota State Medical Association. And Dr. Giebink, thank you so much for joining us here today on the broadcast.
Glad to be here.
So we have a very important issue coming up here with the South Dakota ballot. And before we talk about Amendment G, I notice that you are a former abortionist. You actually work for Planned Parenthood, is that correct?
Yes.
So what changed your mind from being an abortion doctor, from taking life, to actually that of preserving and standing up for life?
Well, many, many years of different situations, but ultimately I saw women, I was meeting more women who had been hurt by abortion. And with all that had changed in medicine and all the advances, it just became clear that it wasn't just a bunch of tissue, that it was, in fact, a human being. And, of course, I was delivering babies, which is a passion of mine, love doing deliveries. So I just came to realize that life is precious and unique, and that it is better to preserve that than to end it.
Well, and we could spend a whole program just learning more about that, but you do have a very important constitutional question on your ballot this November 5th. It's known as Amendment G. We'll talk about the controversy in just a moment, but tell us about Amendment G itself.
Well, Amendment G really is so broad and so vague. It opens the door to abortion in South Dakota. Right now we have a ban following the overturning of Roe v. Wade. There was a trigger ban in our state, and so the only exception is to save the life of the mother. So this Amendment G is radical. It's extreme. It has no protections in South Dakota, prior to overturning Roe v. Wade, the legislature had enacted a number of bills to protect women from unscrupulous abortion practices, things that would provide for true informed consent, a waiting period, because in my experience, a lot of women actually have abortions who haven't made up their mind. They're really looking for answers and have a lot of questions, and instead they're sort of processed through the abortion clinic, and that may not be what they really wanted. So the wording is confusing, and it uses words that are hard to define. So it also uses the trimester form. So basically in the first trimester of pregnancy, which is up to about 13 weeks, it says there can be no regulations. And that means there's no protections.
Yeah, anything goes.
Anything goes. In the second trimester, it says there can be some regulation. Still, again, it's so vague and so broad that you can interpret that in many ways. Even the third trimester, when it talks about that you can do an abortion for the woman's health reasons, and it doesn't define that. So how do we define health? Can it be so broad as to include, emotional things? I just don't feel well. I don't want to do this anymore. This opens the door wide open for all kinds of questionable practices. And this is not South Dakota people. Mm-hmm. It is too extreme for South Dakota.
Is this an amendment that a yes vote means yes to adopt Amendment G and a no vote means do not adopt it?
Correct.
And so Amendment G would really bring abortion on demand for any reason, and it allows for the state to do some regulation in the second and third trimesters, but no guarantee there, especially because of a lack of definition on the aspect of health. And you indicate that there is a lot of misinformation going on, even right now in the state, pertaining to a South Dakota woman by the name of Thea McCauley. What can you tell us?
Well, I only know what I have read in the news. So I don't personally have information, but it appears that she had a set of twins at 12 weeks, and the heartbeats must have stopped because they were doing, I'm assuming, a D&C for a miscarriage or inevitable miscarriage. And from what I've read in the news, in the papers, that following this procedure, she went home and passed one of the babies, and I think then she went to the hospital and passed the second one, and then had an infection, and they are presuming that a uterine perforation, that the instrument went through the uterus. So I'm sure she's on antibiotics. I would assume she's on antibiotics for infection and being watched very closely. So the fear is that if we open the door to abortion for any case, for anyone, this is not going to be uncommon. There's going to be more and more practices like this, especially if you talk about the abortion pill, and women are having their abortions at home, possibly having problems, ending up at the local emergency room with physicians who may not even be trained in these procedures for evacuating the uterus. This can be a very overwhelming problem.
We're talking right now with Dr. Patty Giebink, who is a medical doctor in South Dakota. We're discussing Amendment G right now that is on the ballot this coming November 5th. And what I'm hearing you say, Doctor, if this Amendment G passes, this is something that would put many more women in danger, put many more women in exposing them to the trauma that Thea McCauley has faced here in her situation?
Yes, that would be a concern.
And so this would just open Pandora's box for really abortion on demand for just about any reason, as long as you say, well, mother's health is involved with this. It could be emotional health, as you mentioned, distress, that of just being discouraged. It could be that, I'm just not so sure because I've been dealing with this pain in my arm and I don't want that to get worse. I mean, any number of things, because health is not defined here, but we know that life does begin at conception, and so any abortion is taking the life of a preborn child.
Yes.
How can our listeners obtain more information on Amendment G in South Dakota?
They can go to lifedefensefund.com, and they can read the amendment on that site, go through several screens, and you can read the amendment. Life Defense Fund is the organization that is fighting this amendment. They tried to keep it off the ballot, and truly the process of getting signatures was a mess. And a lot of laws were broken and people were lied to, and it was really sad. And now that they got apparently enough signatures, even though a lot of the signatures are fake, so it will be on the ballot. And the problem is they have confused the issue to the point where the average person has no idea what it means.
Yeah.
And one of the things they say is, well, let the people decide. Well, how can people decide on such an important vote if they've been lied to and given wrong information and confusing information? Women who are considering having an abortion need to have proper and true information. They need to have informed consent. They need to know the risks of the procedure. They need to know, and it's in our South Dakota law, that abortion ends the life of a separate, unique human being. Mm-hmm. And that had to be written into the informed consent prior to overturning Roe v. Wade. And that was protection so that women would understand what is happening. A long time ago, we could get by with saying it was just a bunch of tissue. But now with sophisticated ultrasound and all the information that we have learned in the last 50 years, that women need to know exactly what's happening and what's going on. And there are risks of the procedure. Even, like I said, with the abortion pill, there are risks to that because women are passing tissue at home, and it's scary, and they're not given any emergency information other than if you have problems, go to the emergency room and don't tell them you took the abortion pill. It's misleading information like that it's just so dangerous. And South Dakota can do so much better. This is way too extreme for South Dakota. And if the average South Dakota person understood how extreme this was and how it, like you say, it opens up Pandora's box to all kinds of things happening. We could become a state where people who may be marginally trained come to set up a clinic because they think they can make money. Mm-hmm. It's just endless the way that things could be done at that point.
Dr. Giebink, we thank you for being with us here today on the broadcast, exposing what's going on in South Dakota. And friends, again, the website lifedefensefund.com, where you can see the wording on the ballot. But those of you in South Dakota, you know the information now. You have heard it, and you can share it with others as well. Lifedefensefund.com. Dr. Giebink, thank you for being with us.
Thank you so much.
Mm-hmm. That was Dr. Patty Giebink with us, board-certified OBGYN. She is a former abortion doctor, and warning about this Amendment G coming up in South Dakota. South Dakota is not alone in this issue of having abortion on the ballot. Multiple states are doing it, friends. Abortion takes the life of another human being, a distinct human being. This is not just somebody that is of a different blood type. The child is a different blood type and has its own DNA from the child's mother. Back in a minute. You're listening to Crosstalk.
Romans chapter 1, verse 20.
For the invisible things of him from the creation of the world are clearly seen, being understood by the things that are made, even his eternal power and Godhead, so that they are without excuse.
Yes, creation points to a creator. The book, Without Excuse, is a vibrant, hardcover devotional presenting evidence for creation by providing 365 different examples of how well science supports a biblical model for our origins. Topics range from biology to geology, genetics to botany, anatomy to history. Without Excuse has over 300 color illustrations and is written in a style appropriate to be read to young children, yet profoundly enjoyable for adults. Without Excuse. Available for a donation of $18 to VCY. Call 1-800-729-9829.
It's a news roundup day here on Crosstalk, and interjected that quick interview here as this a very important issue going on in the state of South Dakota as in other states. And again, friends, I cannot overstate the importance of this November 5 election and the stewardship. I mean, the accountability that each of us has that are of voting age and legally here in the United States to cast a vote, a prayerful vote. God, how would you have me vote on these issues? Help me to vote biblically on the matters that are before me. As we continue on in our news today, a troubling story that came out today from the Milwaukee Journal-Sentinel. A federal judge has ordered the Elkhorn Area School District, Elkhorn, Wisconsin, to allow a transgender 8th grader to use the girls' bathroom this fall while the student's lawsuit awaits a final ruling. Again, we have the situation of a biological male identifying as female. The student's attorneys are arguing that the school district violated Title IX, a federal law that prohibits discrimination based on sex, when administrators denied her access to the girls' bathroom. The problem is, folks, that the Biden-Harris administration, and this is also true of the Governor Walz of Minnesota, view sex as being sexual orientation and gender identity. So no matter how you want to identify yourself, you're covered by this Title IX. And the Elkhorn Area School Superintendent, Jason Tadlock, said his district is going to comply with the order. He disagrees with it. They're going to be installing privacy screens in all stalls in the girls' bathrooms to cover those cracks in between the partitions. And there are a number of parents who said, we're out of here. We are out of here. We're going to start homeschooling. We're going to go to private school. We're not going to put our daughters in that situation, going into a restroom where there are biological males. Outrageous. The federal judge has made such a decision. That's my opinion. But friends, sadly, this is happening all across the nation. This is something that is totally being advanced by the Biden-Harris administration. They are putting forth this Title IX rule change through the U.S. Department of Education, and the rule change does not apply to sports yet, because, friends, we're coming up to the election, and people are seeing what's happening right now with biological males identifying as females and what that's doing to the decimation of girls' sports. And so, but that's going to be coming next. Wake up to where we are today. But this is being pushed by the Biden-Harris administration right now, and it's their desire to force this upon your school district. Doesn't matter if you've got 200 kids in your school district or your school, or 50 kids in a class in your school facility in a rural area. It doesn't matter. They're going to force this down the throats of America. That's another issue here. From FoxNews.com, a local Pennsylvania police officer said he told the Secret Service to secure the building where former President Trump's would-be assassin fired off his rifle, newly released body cam footage suggests. We've taken out some of the cursing that was here, the improper language, but he said, I told them that they need to post the guys over there. the Secret Service. I told them that Tuesday. I told them to post guys over there. I thought you guys were on the roof, another police officer believed to be from the Butler City Police Department can be heard saying. No, we were inside, the Butler Township Police Department officer says. The exchange appears to highlight the disorganized nature of the security in place for the rally that day for former President Trump. It has sparked various finger-pointing among the various agencies involved. From Blaze Media, the U.S. Secret Service had no agents stationed in the local police command center when the urgent radio dispatches warned of a man with a gun on the roof 130 yards from where the president was speaking. The acting Secret Service director said on August 2nd, it was apparent to me that in this incident, in the first 30 seconds, there was clearly radio transmissions that may have happened on that local radio net that we did not have, Ronald Rouse said during a Washington, D.C. press briefing. And so we have to do a better job of co-locating, leveraging that counterpart system, and that is going to drive our operations going forward. He said the admission appears, a statement here in the article, the admission appears to answer the urgent question asked by members of Congress and security analysts over the past several weeks. If local police knew about a man with a gun, why didn't Secret Service snipers know? If a state or local agency sets up a unified command post, maybe we need to be in that room as well, as opposed to just being in another room and relying on that counterpart system, Rouse said. The question many are asking is who has been fired? Nobody. Who has been released as a result of the security breach? Who was in charge of the security operations that particular day? Just the News is reporting D.C. Metro Police arrested a Texas woman last week for alleged threats against former President Trump. Local police took Christina Montoya of Texas into custody after the Secret Service alerted them. 41-year-old, San Antonio, Texas, arrested, charged with carrying a pistol without a license, possession of an unregistered firearm, and threats against the former president, D.C. Metro Police said. From RedState.com, in July of 23, a uniformed Secret Service agent found a bag of cocaine in the White House. Now we learn that the former director of the Secret Service, Kimberly Cheadle, who resigned in disgrace following the assassination attempt on former President Trump, conspired to eliminate any evidence that the White House cocaine existed at all. Former Secret Service Director Kimberly Cheadle and others in top agency leadership positions wanted to destroy the cocaine discovered at the White House last summer, but the Secret Service Forensic Service Division and the Uniform Division stood firm and rejected the push to dispose of the evidence, according to 3 sources in the Secret Service community. At least one uniformed division officer was initially assigned to investigate the cocaine incident, but after he told his supervisors, including Cheadle and the acting Secret Service Director, Ron Rowe, that he wanted to follow a certain crime scene investigative protocol, he was taken off the case. National Review reporting the 3 terrorists who signed plea agreements that were countersigned by the Defense Department official who was authorized to approve such agreements now claim that the Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin was powerless to rescind the agreements. Folks, they worked out a plea deal with the 3 jihadists. Khalid Sheikh Mohammed, the mastermind of 9/11, the suicide hijackings, killing nearly 3,000 Americans, and 2 of his accomplices, Mustafa al-Hariswari and Walid bin Atash, contend that the plea agreements became binding contracts once they were signed last Wednesday, July 31st. The judge in the commission prosecution, Colonel Matthew McCall, has thus far declined to rule that the government has breached a lawful contract. Nevertheless, he has authorized defense counsel to investigate the matter. Western Journal reporting President Biden lashed out at House Speaker Mike Johnson on Monday after Johnson indicated that Biden's plan to change the rules for appointing Supreme Court justices had no chance of passing the House. As noted in a video posted on X, after Biden arrived in Austin, a reporter called out, "Mr. President, House Speaker Johnson says your Supreme Court reform is dead on arrival. What's your reaction, sir?" He said after being told a second time that Johnson made the comment, Biden said, "I think that's what he is," adding moments later that he is dead on arrival. That's according to White House transcript. Townhall.com, the Department of Justice has indicted a number of executives from the voting machine company Smartmatic Thursday, including founder and president Roger Pinotti, on a series of federal money laundering and bribery charges. a federal grand jury in the Southern District of Florida returning an indictment charging 3 executives of an election voting machine and service provider company and a former chairman of the Commission on the Elections of the Republic of the Philippines for their roles in an alleged bribery and money laundering scheme to retain and obtain business related to the 2016 Philippine elections, the DOJ released yesterday. From Just the News, Virginia Governor Glenn Youngkin signed an executive order Wednesday codifying the election security measures and listing procedures to prevent non-citizens from voting in elections. The executive order directs the Commission of the Department of Elections to annually certify that election security measures are in place regarding ballot security, testing and certification of ballot counting machines, triple-checking the accuracy of election results, and daily updating of voter rolls. The order also explains the procedures regarding non-citizens who attempt to register to vote, including referring them to the local Commonwealth's attorney. We use 100% paper ballots with a strict chain of custody, he added. We use counting machines, not voting machines. They are tested prior to every election and never connected to the internet. We do not mass mail ballots. We monitor our drop boxes 24/7. From Just the News, a Georgia State Election Board Wednesday night voted to request that State Attorney General Chris Carr reopen an investigation into Fulton County's counting of the results of the 2020 election. Folks, we're 4 years later, and we still don't get this right. We still don't have answers. The request comes after the board closed the matter in May, but voted to install an independent election monitor for the 2024 election after an independent investigation found that the county likely scanned thousands of ballots twice in a recount of the 2020 election. The election board voted the new resolution in a 3-2 vote. Also, the Center for Tech and Civic Life is pouring new election grant funding into rural areas in 20 states after Zuckerbucks and the 2020 election sparked backlash across the country, reports Just the News. Following the private funding of election administration during the 2020 presidential election, most states cracked down on it by enacting laws to prevent such funding in future elections. However, many states still allow it, and they are focusing on granting funds to election offices in rural counties throughout the 2024 presidential election cycle. They announced in 2024 Rural and Non-Metro Election Infrastructure Grant Program, on which makes $2.5 million of grant funding available to 20 states. The grant applications opened on August 2nd for the U.S. territories and the following states: Alaska, California, Colorado, Connecticut, Delaware, Hawaii, Illinois, Maine, Maryland, Massachusetts, Michigan, Minnesota, Nevada, New Hampshire, New Mexico, New York, Oregon, Vermont, Washington, and Wyoming. The grant funds are to be used for election administration between July 31 and December 31, 2024, according to the CTCL's website. It's amazing, friends. Just amazing to see what happens here in all of this. Are you praying for this election, by the way? Are you praying for it? Do you recognize the stewardship of a vote that you have, the stewardship of your vote? From the Free Beacon, the city of Chicago has yet to grant a pro-Israel group's permit request for a rally near the Democratic National Convention later this month, despite having approved an anti-Israel's group request to hold a similar rally during the same event. The Israeli American Council, pro-Israel nonprofit organization looking to hold a solidarity march at the convention, filed 2 applications with Chicago's Department of Transportation at the beginning of July, has yet to receive an answer from the city, even after following up phone calls and email. A coalition of anti-Israel activist groups, though, received permission last month for a protest route, a so-called March on the DNC, near the convention. Organizers predict more than 25,000 protesters will be attending this DNC event. From Washington Examiner, Representative Cori Bush vowed retribution on the pro-Israel group that helped block her, from a third term in the House of Representatives over her pro-Palestinian views. It was a fiery speech Tuesday night. Bush said her loss to a St. Louis District Attorney Wesley Bell had only taken some of the strings off, that she would spend her time outside of office campaigning against the interests that had opposed her. The Daily Caller tells us Columbia University confirmed Thursday 3 university deans resigned following the leak of anti-Semitic text messages, the New York Times reported. The resignations come after the deans responsible for undergraduate student affairs were placed on indefinite leave in June as investigations into matters proceeded. The text included remarks that suggested a Jewish speaker was exaggerating anti-Semitism concerns for fundraising purposes and other inappropriate comments made in response to the speakers at the event. Friends, I've got more news, but you know what? It's time to open our phone lines here as well. Our telephone number, if you want to make a comment on these or other current event stories, our number 800-733-9829. That's 800-733-9829. You're listening to Crosstalk.
For the Worldview Report, I'm Brandon House. You need some hope today? The world seems to be on fire. The stock market's crashing. War is imminent in the Middle East. Venezuela is in violence. We also have the UK with massive violence, and that's just scratching the surface, not to mention Ukraine and Russia. Well, let me give you some hope, my friends. Revelation chapter 4 says, around the throne were 24 thrones, and on the thrones I saw 24 elders sitting clothed in white robes, and they had crowns of gold on their heads. What is going on here? We've just come out of Revelation chapter 2 and 3, the letters to the churches. That's to you, church. That's to me. And what does the Lord say to them? He says in Revelation 2:10, I'll give you a crown of life. He says in Revelation 3:5, I'll give you white garments. Revelation 3:11, you'll get a crown. Revelation 3:18, buy from me gold, white garments. And then Revelation 3:21, you're going to end up sitting on my throne. And what do we see in Revelation 4:4? All those things. Thrones, white robes, crowns of gold. What's the point, folks? The Bible says the church is out of here before the tribulation. That's hope.
It's a news roundup day here on Crosstalk. By the way, from townhall.com, the Biden-Harris administration released a Venezuelan illegal immigrant with suspected gang ties into the United States who went on to commit 22 crimes in just 6 months. Daniel Hernandez Martinez, arrested, released in New York City 6 times on 14 charges, yet no plans for the Department of Homeland Security to deport him. Also from townhall.com, a new report from the House Judiciary Committee. Terror at our door, how the Biden and the Harris administration's open borders policies undermine national security and endanger Americans, revealed from fiscal year 2021 to 23. 250 illegal aliens on the terror watch list had been encountered at the southern border. At least 99 of them were released into the country. Let's go to the phone lines here today on Crosstalk. We have got Barry calling from Tennessee. Hi, Barry. You're on the air.
Yes, Jim. What we're dealing with here in this government are reprobate minds that have been given over totally to Satan.
Yes.
And the only antidote for that, I mean, we can talk and do what we can do. We do what we can do physically. But the only antidote for this is sincere, fervent prayer from godly people. That's what will put the devil down and put him in his place. But if you don't see that, you don't see people aren't praying. We're not getting that prayer. Heaven's not being bombarded with those prayers. But that is the only thing that's going to change all this nonsense.
Thank you. Thank you for the call. The effectual, fervent prayer of a righteous man, as we're told in the book of James, availeth much. Availeth much. Matter of fact, we are going to be engaged in a day of prayer on the Saturday before the election. This would be on Saturday, November 2nd, holding a day of prayer in the facilities at Trail Ridge Camp. Those within driving distance, we encourage you to come. Information at trailridge.org. Goodyear, Arizona, we have Daniel calling. Daniel, you're on the air.
Hi, Jim. I enjoy your show. I just want to encourage every believer, every follower of Christ, to vote for Donald Trump. As flawed as this man is, and I pray that he does come to faith, true faith in Jesus Christ. Thank you, Jim. I appreciate you.
Thank you for your call. Greg in Bloomington, Illinois, you're on the air.
Yeah, thank you, Jim. I would just like to encourage my Christian brothers and sisters to please pray for that doctor that used to work for Planned Parenthood. I'm sure it was very courageous. I believe it was very courageous of her that she came on and she just changed her mind. Sounds to me like the Lord's working in her heart. And I don't know if she's saved or not, but she sounds like she may be going that way. So, brothers and sisters, please pray for her. Thank you.
Thank you, Greg. Our phone number to Crosstalk, 800-733-9829. Mary in Milwaukee, you're on the air.
Yeah, I absolutely detest abortion. I used to support it, and I don't live too far from a clinic. It's called Affiliated. I don't even call it a clinic. But why do people bring down pictures of chopped up images? It really disturbs me. But I pray for this upcoming election, and God bless you, Mr. Schneider at Crosstalk. And I really hate abortion now, and Jesus saved my life on it. I hate it. God bless you.
Thank you, Mary, so much for your call. And many who have shown the pictures indicate this is what it takes to help people understand the horrors of abortion. Just as our hearts are open to see the horrors of the Holocaust when we see the victims of the Holocaust. In that regard, abortion kills children, no doubt about it. And by the way, our number 800-733-9829, lifesitenews.com. All insurers in Illinois will now be required. All insurers are going to be required to cover induced abortions thanks to a new bill signed by Governor J.B. Pritzker. This week, Pritzker held a signing ceremony for the Birth Equity Initiative. The Birth Equity Initiative that mandates that Illinois-based health insurance, both private and Medicaid, must cover abortion with no copays, no deductibles. Friends, even if there was a copay or deductible, it'd still be wrong. Still would be wrong. LifeNews.com tells us that thousands of Christians are contacting Walmart. They're contacting Costco, contacting Kroger. Don't sell the abortion drugs. The letter is signed by Christian financial technology firm Inspire Insight financial advisor David Bashan, proxy voting and so forth through different entities, but there are members of these chains or those that patronize them to not sell the abortion drug. And LifeSite News, make it lifenews.com, a report from the Texas Health and Human Services Commission found that from June of 22 to March of 24, reported elective abortions in Texas have consistently dropped from thousands per month down to zero, according to a Texas Alliance for Life news release. We've got Paul calling from Kentucky. Paul, you're on the air.
Yes, I just want to make a comment that this is not about Republican and Democrat. This is about wrong versus right. This is about good versus evil. So we need, when we go to the polls, we need to keep that in our hearts and keep that in our minds. And that's all I have to say.
Okay, thank you for your call. We've got Merle in Tennessee. You're on the air, Merle.
Yes, Jim. At any given time on the face of the earth, there's two groups of people, the children of the devil and the children of God. It says Satan was a murderer from the beginning. It says also he was the father of lies, and there's no truth in him. So what's happening is the children of the devil are following their father. That's why all the lies, all the deceit, all the abortion, we need to be following our Father, who's the way, the truth, and the life through Jesus Christ. And I thank you, sir.
Thank you for your call. Sharon in calling, is it Minnesota? You're on the air.
Yes, good afternoon. I just wanted to share some scripture to encourage because I get discouraged too. So I've been memorizing scripture to encourage myself. And I agree we do need to be prayerful for the election and for those who are running. And my scripture is, put not your confidence in princes, nor in the Son of Man in whom there is no help. It is better to trust in the Lord than to put confidence in man.
Yeah.
It is better to trust in the Lord than to put confidence in princes. And I don't remember what the scripture says, but it basically says that the righteous will perish, and we need to encourage ourselves in that.
Okay, thank you so much for your comment here, Diane, from the Arizona mountains. We appreciate your call here today. And friends, with that, we have run out of time here on the program for additional phone calls. But we do live in perilous times, do we not? But we keep our hope, our faith, our trust in the Lord. Some trust in chariots, some in horses. We will remember the name of the Lord our God. Keep your trust in Him. Keep your eyes focused on Him. And by the way, the Lord's Day is coming this Sunday. May you be in a Bible-believing, Bible-teaching local church. Thanks for listening.
You've been listening to Crosstalk via satellite and the internet from VCY America. Views expressed may or may not be those of this station. For a CD of today's program, send a donation of $6 or more to VCY Tape Ministry, 3434 West Kilbourne Avenue, Milwaukee, Wisconsin 53208, or download by RSS or podcast from crosstalkamerica.com. And join us again for Crosstalk.